few things as mayor. I was thinking to myself the other day, one of the top 3 things that I would do is not just talk about managing homelessness, but ending it. We are the homeless capital of America. And we have veterans who are returning from war in Iraq and Afghanistan. At Los Angeles City College in my own district, half of them who are going to school are homeless. Here's how we're doing it in Hollywood, and this is what I would do citywide. Permanent supportive housing that gives services together with housing. Sometimes we feed people on the streets, but they stay on the streets. Or we put them into housing, but we give them no way to get out of their mental health problems or their substance abuse addictions. We need to put them together. In Hollywood, we didn't just count the homeless that are there, which we have to do by federal law. We got to know who they were. I went out there at 4 o'clock in the morning, talked to folks who are under bridges, youth who have just emancipated from the foster system, veterans, others. And when we learned their stories, which had been homeless for how long, who had a mental health issue, who was a drug addict, we were able to actually manage them. And together with the faith community, the business community, nonprofits, and government, we've been taking them off the street so far, over 200 with a 95% success rate.
When I was with the Clinton administration, I served as the Deputy Director of the Interagency Council on the Homeless, working on national homeless programs and putting together the first national report and plan on how to end homelessness. In Los Angeles, we have 90,000 homeless every single night. It's not only about permanent supportive housing, which is critical to the future, it's obviously about shelter and making sure we do the kind of outreach to get people off the street. But it's about prevention. It's about ensuring that that family who otherwise would be in a home suddenly loses that rent, can't afford, loses their job, can't afford the rent, and suddenly are homeless. Let's help ensure that we prevent that from ever happening. Let's ensure that our homeless veterans, 40% of them never become homeless, and when they come back from their service, that we ensure they have direct access to housing. Let's make sure that the money that we get in the city of Los Angeles, and that I've looked at as city controller, goes to housing and not other things, but more importantly, goes to housing and not expensive meals. I'm someone who has the experience and knowledge about housing on a national level, a local level, and together, we can stop homelessness and end it in Los Angeles.
Well, I wish I had more time to spend on this than just 1 minute. When we look at our homeless problem, it's about priorities. I was the chairman for a number of years of AIDS Project Los Angeles, the co-chair. And we had a homeless problem with many of our clients who had lost their homes, stricken with AIDS. And our housing assistance program was very important. There are a number of things we can do in the city. We can convert existing city buildings that are unused. I have a position paper. I've published position papers not just on my website, but in numerous places, Huffington Post, City Watch, a lot of places. If you go to my website at kevinjamesformayor.com, you'll see my position paper on homeless. But if you do anything on understanding how this city has not made it a priority, Google 2 things when you get home. Google Gensler architecture and Skid Row in a Steve Lopez column. And he talked about how in City Hall, they took $1 million federal community block grant that was supposed to go to Skid Row, and they re-earmarked that towards Gensler Architecture, one of the richest architecture firms in the country, so they could decorate their offices in the Jewel Box building. It's about priorities. Read that LA Times story. Don't take my advice here.
I represented Skid Row for the last 11 years, and my focus was building housing with wraparound services for the people who inhabited those buildings, and it was very targeted. Some of the housing was for seniors who were homeless, people who were recovering from substance abuse and mental illness, housing for veterans, housing for people at all stages of life. Not only did I do that, I went out once a month with providers, mental health outreach workers, to talk to people on the street and to convince them to come in for services. A very difficult task to do because you can't force people to come in for services. You have to convince them that they did it on their own, and that's something that we need to continue to do. But one thing you should know, Los Angeles, the city of Los Angeles, has over 50% of the homeless people in the county of Los Angeles living in the city of Los Angeles, in downtown Los Angeles, and yet we do not get our fair share of federal funding or funding from the county to provide social services, wraparound services for the individuals who are living on the street. That needs to change, and as mayor, that is something that I would focus on.
Like pretty much every politician I've ever spoken to says that they care about the homeless population, right? But it's not about just giving a lip service. We need someone with real leadership who's going to actually address it head on and not just accept it. We can't accept that we have the biggest homeless population anywhere in the country. It is unacceptable. And yes, we need to make sure that we do provide some kind of shelter and we have more money going that way. But what happens is that when we are dealing with the budget crises that we have, the constituency of the homeless doesn't have the same big lobby power. And they're one of the first things that gets cut. We need a mayor that looks across the board and looks at where the public investment dollars are going to create the largest yield. And that's making sure that we have shelter services, mental health services, and make sure that we're looking at which homeless can actually have some skills training to get back into society. What I will make sure we do is to actually build a social venture fund that is going to be led by entrepreneurs, that's going to have social impact dollars going straight into the homeless population. That's what I bring to the table from my private sector experience and investment experience, to be able to build such a vehicle to address the homeless population and not have to tap so much into public dollars.
Thank you. The west side extension of the subway, the controversial issue of whether it should go under Beverly Hills. It's been a major subject at Shabbos tables, and I want to ask every candidate to speak to the issue of the west side extension and especially comment on the route and stop chosen and going under the city of Beverly Hills. We're going to start from the other end, Manuel, and then go right to Mr. Garcetti.